Hello and welcome to another update from Neil's Trains. In this series, which I'm calling On the Layout or the Module, I'm going to be taking you through the recent updates to my layout or indeed my modules, hopefully plural. This first introductory episode will cover a time frame starting from mid-September up until the end of October as I embark on my second and what I'll argue at this early stage, my more successful version of a module. Ready to go? Let's roll. Being the first episode of this particular series, this is a perfect place to start anew, again. As mentioned in the previous video, I cannot promise this will continue indefinitely, but I can promise my main objective is to have fun with it while it lasts. So, diving right in, my main goal for September was to retry with some modules, or at least a module. I've made an attempt before, but it was a little too large and it was badly supported. The construction was also troublesome, hence going back to the drawing board, or so to speak. What's in front of us right now is a crude Word document version of the pen drawings I did for measuring the framework. Lessons learned from the first attempt, which I took into account in this design, include supporting framework around all the edges. The previous version only had the ends. Some considerations for power routing, and some considerations for legs. The original version, if memory serves, was assuming I didn't use trestles. And finally, a closer relationship to the Thamesiders specifications. The original plan was to build a 5-foot by 2-foot module first to start a corner. I started with the inner framework, this time measuring and marking every length, hole and section. Emphasis on the holes in the middle strut and the offset of the 2 pairs of insert grippers. Also shown are the templates for the leg inserts themselves. I must mention, prior to adding the fascia, I had a silly panic moment thinking the corners were actually 2x4s. One Thamesiders meet later confirmed it was still 2x5. This, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you view it, was realized after I had shortened the outer frame by a foot. I was therefore forced to focus on a straight module first. The fortunate side of this meant I could get going sooner, instead of waiting for an additional module to be finished. Unfortunately, curves are of special interest, and this fact will be made more relevant later. So, accepting the mistake, I moved on to the legs. These were fairly straightforward to make, using some inspiration from the Thamesiders, but obviously with my own tweaks. There is one additional mistake made here, but I'll reveal that later. The boards I am using are the pink XPS foam boards, which were commercially available at least a decade ago in the UK. Nowadays, we only see them occasionally pop up for sale online. I used a foam cutter to get them to fit in nicely, which is more economical for the surface area used versus what was wasted in storing for version 1. In between drying and breaks, I did fill in some of the fillable holes in the boards. I am a stickler for recycling anything I can, so using these boards after they've been through at least 2 different layout setups was a no-brainer. Also, the fascia and formwork on the module is all recycled materials. However, most material on the legs are made of fresh wood. I wasn't fast enough in the breakdown sessions, nor could I guarantee the strength of the recycled wood. Plus, the large boards used for the middle supports is stronger than the plywood used for the fascia. The next stage was bracing. Next mistake for this was thinking a simple board in between the 2 legs was sufficient for holding the module steady. Dead wrong. It needed a proper span between the leg and module at an angle. On the left is a good start, and the module was more stable with just this connection. However, for those into guessing games, can you identify the next mistake I made which is visible in the photo? I'll leave it for a bit before revealing. After resolving the mistake, I then had an idea on the spot regarding storage and travel. The plans we saw before, and now on the left, reveals the intention. In the middle is the finished article ready for a paint job. All it is an additional hole and part to hold the brace vertically against the leg, thereby allowing it to stay with its leg and additionally removing the need to attach 2 bolts during setup. With some penny washers, I made the lower connection swivel freely for that purpose, seen here with the finished paint job. So, after all those hints, Have you figured out the mistake yet? The mistake was the left holder was in the wrong position. Here it is now in its intended position. That probably was the second hardest mistake I've made. Everything else, bar one, seems to have resolved itself quickly or for another benefit. The failed bracing board, for example, I figured could now be used as an impromptu shelf. On that note, the hardest mistake is now present and visible, and is to be revealed properly at the end. Everything cannot be used as arose from disaster, I guess. Before we move on to painting, every connector's hole needed to be marked and drilled. The Thamesiders specifications were very kind in indicating what kind of connector is needed. It also provided optimum locations for each connector from each end of the board. Remember, the Thamesiders Essex Belt Lines modules use a lens protocol. The types of connector in use are a 3-pin XLR, used for track power, an 8-pin DIN, used for the command bus and booster comms, a 6-pin DIN, used for the accessory bus, and finally, a 5-pin DIN, used for throttles. These connectors all have wiring specifications to match the lens protocol. However, looking at the types of wire and numbers of feeds, it may be possible to integrate my NCE command station into this protocol for use independently away from the Essex Belt Lines layout. A point of caution before moving forward. I am aware both in the NCE and lens protocols are not the same, so please take this as fair warning before attempting integration yourself. My own intentions is to have it viable for separate running and never running with the lens system. Don't be foolish, and if you're unsure, avoid heartache and don't do it. Carrying on, I cut the required holes for the connectors. It was all spade flat drill bits needed here, and from memory it was 13 for everything except the XLR connectors, and the SLR connectors themselves needed a 23. As you can see, I'm using a Ryobi 1 Plus cordless drill to do the job. This is a good little tool for me and serves as both a suitable driver and drill for these tasks. Another caution, however, the kickback with the larger spade bits can be quite big, so I'd recommend using a drill with a stabilizer or guide if you're unsure or unfamiliar with a task like these. And one more point for my fellow amateur carpenters out there. A pilot hole makes the world of difference. 2 remaining connectors were prepared. The pattern maker's dowels, aka the baseboard alignment dowels. These needed number 25 spades, so they were handled carefully and patiently. I'll explain the importance and purpose of these in a later video. For now, let's just say both of my clubs swear by them, so that advice is not easily ignored. It was now time for the paint job. 2 coats of primer and 2 coats of matte black. You'll have to excuse the state of the baseboard in this last picture. It only had a single coat at this point, and the legs had their second. And there we are, with 4 coats of paint. I was extremely pleased with this result, despite the problem I was soon to discover shortly after taking this picture. But before we go into that, I'd like to talk about the aspirations and plans for this module, and possibly others to come. This is probably one of the best parts for me, track planning. I'm essentially dreaming here, as well as testing those dreams. Back towards the start of this video, I was talking about the mistake with shortening the module, so it was no longer a curve. Well, the original dream for these modules was to start with a corner layout, say 3 modules deep, with a corner as the centerpiece. Now instead, I'm adapting my aspirations to serve this module, and from a minimalist standpoint, have a little layout only 2 boards long, 1 public section and 1 staging section. My current idea is around this factory or warehouse. It has been sitting on the carcass of the old layout for some time and needs some tender loving care. It's a medium-sized building, and from what I understand, this size of business that would be here wouldn't have that many carloads. This makes it perfect for representing a small operation on a small layout. So began the planning and dreaming. In my point of view, in the interest of keeping things simple and the main line aligned with the Thamesiders spec, I came up with 3 options. Option 1. A single car space just outside of the staging board with a ladder. This would be good for simplifying a setup where I intend to expand the size of the layout in future, but doesn't serve the 2-board spec well, in terms of having switching on the main. Option 2. A variation of option 1 where the car space is moved up 1 point on the ladder, reducing the switching requirement on the main. This felt like a middle ground option for both a 2-board setup and a future larger setup. Option 3. This to me feels optimum for a two-board setup, and potentially removes all risk from switching on the main in the event I extend the solution. It isn't very friendly for larger locomotives though, and larger engines may still foul the main if tasked with switching this area. I am leaning towards option 3 personally, but I am interested in your thoughts. Leave a comment in the comment section if you have any preference or have any better ideas for a single scenic board like this served by a small staging area on the right. And that leads us nicely back to the burning question. What is badly wrong with this module which I have painstakingly prepared and painted 4 times? Well, the problem is, and I'm very sorry to say, is that the legs are too short. The Thamesiders spec define the height from the floor to railhead as 45 inches. This, in the picture, is barely 42 inches. I've tested one quick solution already, standing it on some thick wood to make up the difference. Didn't feel very stable. The next solution, with inspiration from the father, is bolting the extensions into the legs themselves. It seems more stable, but it isn't great. It seems the final, all-correcting solution for this is just to redo the legs. So much for all that talk of recycling after all that has been done. This is one big lesson learned, but on the positive side, it was a little tricky for me to measure out the correct height, accounting for the join between the leg and the board. Hence the big mistake. This means I now have a template to use for the eventual replacements, and the staging board I plan to start in November. So there is some roses from the ashes of disaster after all. This is probably a good place to wrap up this video. That second solution was attempted upon the final recording of this, so the hit is still fresh. Historically speaking, my creativity doesn't tend to drop because of a mistake like this, so there is hope for these episodes to continue for now. But again, I must stress, I can't promise for sure. Thanks again for taking the time to watch this video. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you don't haven't already, please subscribe to the channel.